Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my Thursday night evening. I'm not sure where it is, what time it is where you are, but good day, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. PL Sturt, John Kingdom Saga, 6 Elemental Interviews, and tonight I have an outstanding guest. This is someone who I read their work recently. It was a book I also wanted to get to when I first heard about it, but I didn't know when I would. But then something was just calling me. I kept hearing all this praise for it. I bumped into the TBR, and wow, I was blown away. Sister Samurai by Tatiana Obey. That is my guest tonight, uh, everyone, and I am very honored and privileged to have Tatiana join me. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for coming. How are you doing?
Thank you, thank you. I am good. I am good. Also, my last name is pronounced Obi, so Tatiana
Obi.
Obi. Yes,
I
and
apologize. Okay, Obi.
yeah, it's the spelling. It's obvious. But I'm glad to be here and glad to hang out and talk to you. Today is Black Indie Author Day, so it's really cool to like hang out and talk about books and writing. My favorite topic that I can go on forever about.
That is awesome. And yeah, we were just talking backstage prior that I hadn't realized that I'd scheduled your interview on Black Indie Author Day. However, it was quite fortuitous. Obviously, it must be, you know, destiny. We were also just chatting a bit when I were backstage. Just it's funny how as a Black creative you come into a space and you don't know what to expect, right? So, what's your experience been as a Black indie author in the fantasy sphere? What's it been like?
I kind of want to echo that a bit. You don't know what to expect, right? You do go in with positive expectations, and it's always nice to get like positive responses, and you're just like, oh, especially with Sister Samurai because it is such it is such a book that is heavily like marketed towards the black gaze, right? Like it is very much like this is for the target audience is for black nerds, and to see how it has been embraced has definitely was especially overwhelming for me at first. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting it. Like I really wasn't expecting it. I really wrote it for like I think a small subset of people that was like, oh, I think we need this. We haven't had a book like this, and I was like, oh, I think this is needed in this space. And it has been great to see how it has been embraced. But as you said before, like sometimes having these connections and having these conversations is great because you'll ask like, hey, how was your experiences with this or with that, and so that you kind of go in a little bit of education and know like okay, all right, this is a good space for you as an author to grow and to thrive and to flourish, because you want to be able to be in spaces where you can continue to grow as a writer.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you said you felt that this was a book that was needed. Why? Why was this book so needed? Why now? Why did a book like this need to come out?
Well, there are several different reasons. I'm very well read in my genre, especially in Black fantasy, in regards to the indie space and the trad space. And before, especially in adult fantasy, a lot of it was oppression. Like a lot of it was Black trauma, a lot of it was Black pain, and I'm just like, we have more stories to tell. Like there's more we can talk about. I wanted to write a book that would just unapologetically was celebratory of black women, celebratory of what black women love, what our passions are, what we nerd out about. And that's just I just wasn't really seeing that, and also a black action heroine, because we do now there are books out there with MCs that are fighting, right? That can fight. But there wasn't really like a action heroine that like I just 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 chopping people up. And that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Like I wanted to see like my moms and my aunt and my sisters. Like I wanted to see them in a fantasy book in this genre that I loved growing up. That I just don't feel as of today has not represented all of our experiences and all of the stories that we can tell. And so I did think this was a really important book. And then also it is heavily inspired by Afro Samurai, and Afro Samurai, it's one of the first animes that had a black main character, and it's kind of a really big touchstone, especially in blurred culture. And this was like way back in the '90s. And then you also have Samurai Champloo, which mixes feudal Japan and hip hop together, and that was back in the '90s. And then kind of also like the stylistic of black exploitation films, like we just didn't see that or have that. I'm like, I want to bring that back. Like, I wanted something that bring that back because there's also a lot of fantasy novels that are very African inspired by great African authors, but I wanted something that unapologetically celebrated Black culture that I grew up with. That was just, just loved on us.
That is incredible. And, I absolutely loved the themes and the fusion of cultures, the black, the Afrocentric and the fros and dreads and weaves and, the obviously the vernacular, the slang, the food, the smells and sounds
Yeah.
of like tangibly of the culture, and then like black culture, and then the fusion with Japanese, samurai and katanas, and like, was it difficult to I know you talked about
Mhm.
the films and anime, but still, but when you're writing a book, is it difficult to fuse all those things together?
Um, I For me, it was a little bit easier because I did go to school to study this. So I did study Asian studies, political science, history, culture. I studied abroad in Japan. I studied 3 years of Japanese. Um, so like, I've in Japan, I've done classes on samurais and girl culture in Japan. So like, all these things were kind of percolating in my head, and to someone because on some level, like this is an allegory. Like I use samurai tropes, I use anime tropes as an allegory to, you know, show what it's like to be a black woman in America. And so to me, like growing up, right, like equating the journey and the stories of the people around me, like to samurais and to the motifs and to these themes, like to me that makes sense because, I was I guess just being surrounded by both cultures and bringing them together, like it made sense to me, like just bringing these how to connect and how to piece things together. Um, would I say it's easy for someone who hasn't done that research? I don't know.
And I think you certainly brought a gravitas that, obviously, now that I'm learning about you, it comes from your background, your experience, your education, etc. That really had that brought that sense of authenticity to the writing, right? So it was amazing. Quickly, I want to pop up because I cannot. I have to give a shout out to Ganesh. What's up, Ganesh? Thanks for coming by, brother. I had the privilege of meeting him just last week in Seattle at
Oh, awesome.
work on one of the highlights. He's such a wonderful, awesome human, fantastic reviewer, great person. So, Ganesh, thanks so much for coming out. Hope you're doing well. And like I said, it was such an honor to meet him in WorldCon in Seattle. So, thanks, brother. So when it came to this book specifically, and it was powerful. It was a love letter to Black women, our beloved and respected matrons, and the generations that have come before, and the generations to come. It was a love letter to, like you said, Black exploitation movies, action, female action heroes, all kinds of awesome stuff went into this. But yet, it packs a punch because it's not big at all, right? And I think it's a real skill, Tatiana, that you possess because I always say writers of novellas and short fiction that can write a book that really sticks and stays with you. That's it's in some ways it's even more impactful than someone who writes a 200,000 page epic. And like this really slammed hard and suddenly and great. I mean, the popularity of this book, hundreds of reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, all kinds of acclaim. I know for me personally, it's maybe shot calling a bit. It's early. It's only August, but this will certainly end up in my top 10 indie books of the year. I have no doubt. It was fabulous. How has the success? How have you managed the success of the book? Like, you put out a book and you don't know what the response is going to be, and as you said, it was overwhelmingly positive. How have you managed the success of the book?
You know, with this book, it was easy because, like, because before this, I wrote a duology, and that's like, it was like what 360,000 words. So I wrote this. I was like, I wanted to do something very different. Like I want to try, write something shorter, um, and I wrote it for a very specific audience, and so I'm very grateful for the support, but at the same time, um, I want to say it's like it's not. I know who I wrote it for, and so like regardless of negative, regardless of positive, to me that's you know, like there are reviews and there are people like who have come to me, especially Black women who have grown up in the anime space, who have said I've never seen myself before. Like I've and that's what matters. Um, that's what matters.
Yeah, that must be particularly rewarding to feel that way. So for those who aren't familiar with what Sister Samurai is about, do you mind giving a bit of an elevator pitch about what this amazing book um, is about?
Yeah, so Sister Samurai, she is the last of her clan and she's out running errands and she's just trying to get home and that is the whole premise. She's just trying to get home, but it's one of those days, so everyone is out bothering her today. But it has an ink-based magic system and she has her swords named Fuck Around and Find Out, so she's not a lady you want to mess with.
That is a brilliant elevator pitch, concise, and it really captures the mood, the essence of it. The fuck around and find it, like the story, like just and it was in my head. I had almost like while I was reading the book, almost like a black spaghetti western with like she's just gonna take on all comers and you
Yes.
don't know who's coming next, but she's gonna take. Well, it was outstanding. I want to quickly put up this comment by Ganesh. I think Ganesh, yeah, it was awesome. But yeah, he also says that Sister Samurai, one of my top 10 reads of 2023. Very excited to jump into the sequel.
Yes, Ganesh, he was one of the first critical reviews of Sister Samurai on a critical blog site. That was from him.
Awesome. Awesome, yeah, yeah, and he clearly loved it as many people do. So, when you conceived this book, did you plan it to be part of a series, an ongoing series?
Um, Initially, no, but one day the title of the fourth book popped in my head, and I said, "Man, I'm the only one who can pull that off, so I might as well do it." So yeah, so I decided to make it a quartet. Since the first book is very heavily spring inspired, I wanted each book to be inspired by a season. So the second book is inspired by summer. So we'll have our fall and winter books coming um next year.
So it's going to be a quadrology. Is that the plan?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, and can we expect other books set in the universe, like these spin-offs or beyond the main series? If
Maybe like there are definitely some things I would like to do. Like I would love to do like a comic book prequel or something like that, and and maybe like a few short stories, especially like the Fall of Atlanta is one that I want to touch upon because a lot of people start reading the book and they're disappointed they don't get to see Atlanta, but like that was intentional because I want you to feel how she misses, like the character misses this place too. Um, but it'll be a great place to kind of explore and stuff. But I think after the four books are out, I'll probably sit it down for a while because I got a lot of stories to tell. I still got a lot of I got a lot more stories to tell.
I hear you. I hear you. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So, how did you get started on this writing journey?
Sure. I mean, I've been writing since I was little. Since I could read. Um, and it's just I guess it kind of came natural. Like I was a storyteller. And now it took me a while to actually publish a book. Because I've written several stories growing up, and it really wasn't until COVID where it's just like, yes, this is my bucket list, let me do it. Let me just get off my butt and do it. So I did it. I saved, all that stimulus money. I saved that money into the book. Um, and I started my company and kind of went forth from there.
Wow. So you decide to make the plunge. Was there a particular path that you chose in terms of how you're going to publish it? Did you always plan to go the indie road? Did you think about traditional publishing? Like, what was the thought process there?
Yeah. I did consider traditional publishing. I have been like watching traditional publishing a lot. Um, it wasn't, at least for me, it wasn't till college till we finally got like N.K. Jemisin, like her first 100,000 kingdoms, right? Like that wasn't till then. Um, and so, and then you finally kind of got Children Blood and Bone in the YA space. And so you start seeing that, okay, there are doors opening here. But at the same time, like I had been doing my research in regards to the publishing industry. I had been talking to people, and even to this day, I don't think they always treat their Black authors very well, or very equitably, compared to like some other like mid-list authors. Um, and so I had decided that I was gonna, and I also wanted to tell my stories my way. I don't know how well Sister Samurai would have done traditionally published. It's a novella. Um, there's a lot of things that I could do with like the playlist and the commercial break, like some really fun formatting things that like I had a lot of control over. That I don't know traditional publishing would have. So yeah, like I just had very, I don't know, I'm very, I did not think at that time my stories would fly with traditional publishing, and I didn't think they would treat me well either. So because of that, and at the time, indie publishing was taking off. Indie publishing had become more viable. You did see a lot more authors who were more successful at indie publishing. Um, so because of that, I decided that okay, indie publishing would be my route. Um, and I'm happy with it. Yeah, I like the control. I like to be able to control the cover, to do the formatting, to kind of have my hands on every kind of part of producing the book. Um, because that's also kind of part of the story and the storytelling in many ways. Um, so yeah, I do enjoy doing that.
Now, is it a never say never case that in the future you might um, write something and query it with an agent and pitch it to traditional publishing, or is it that it's off the table? Like, what's your present state of mind when it comes to that?
Um, I mean, I would be open to hybrid publishing, but it would have to fit with my publishing goals. Um, for example, like I believe Ryan Cahill, he recently signed with the Broken Binding, and one of the things that I was looking at, like with his, like they had stated, like, hey, we're gonna do the next book with the same cover as previous because that's the cover that all your readers have, so they'll have that option. So that those type of flexibilities that really like are kind to the reader and put the reader in mind and put who considers the audience, right? I like that. But that's not every company. That's not every company. Um, and so like I definitely would I would have to know like okay.
No, I understand. I actually wrote an article in Mayday magazine um, about the famous Goodreads review bomber scandal,
Ah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
tied that into also actually I wrote a different article that was about I tied it into N.K. Jemisin and the really tragic, unfortunate things she faced with dealing with the literary establishment when it
Mhm.
came to the high-profile literary awards for which she deservingly won. So you talk about, kind of concern, yeah, a lot of, I think, concerns that a lot of BIPOC authors share about how they're going to be treated, regardless of being a BIPOC author, just in general as an author with traditional publishing, and then on top of that, being a BIPOC author. Um, so part of what I think I love about being an indie author is that I definitely feel embraced in the community, and I don't feel that way. I don't obviously I'm not traditional published, so I don't have that struggle. But on top of that, I feel very embraced, and it feels very cohesive and very unified. Like in the indie community. Has that been your experience as well since you joined?
Um, the indie community is large. Like, and I get surprised by how sometimes the bubbles, if that makes sense. For example, there could be like a really big author on TikTok, but people over here on Twitter don't know who they are. Or they could be a really big indie author on Instagram, but people over here don't really know who they are. So it's very, and then you get like smaller communities, right? Like the BIPOC indie community, the queer indie community. And sometimes there's like Venn diagrams and there's the middle, but then there's kind of like these bubbles. So, like it's huge. It's big. um, so it's I think it's very interesting, kind of because where I am, like I'm in the intersections of a lot of these bubble communities and things, and 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 they all have their different characteristics, I would say, for good reason, right? They have their own audience, they have their own tropes associated with books, etc. It's like saying the difference between the romance indie author community and the fantasy indie author community, right? Like that community, it looks different, and they communicate with each other differently. Um, so, in general, I do feel welcomed, but it's hard to like just put big blank statements on it because it's so big, and there are all these bubbles.
And when you look at the bubbles and you look at the margins, and I think a lot of us sometimes live on these margins because we're part of all, we have our toes dipped into over here and over there and over there. And like you said, sometimes never the twain shall meet. Um, does that present unique challenges, especially as a BIPOC author? Because you may be in segments where I feel like BIPOC authors are generally wonderful and supportive and engaging. They're also they carefully guard, protect themselves, for understandably, against certain issues, right? And so sometimes they don't they don't put themselves in certain communities for fear of having issues, and then some float in and out depending on what route they came. I find that it's even different if you're traditionally published versus indie, and there's so many, like you said, there's so many different communities and sub communities. So, but does it come with unique challenges being a BIPOC author, specifically a BIPOC female author, and floating and on the margin, so to speak?
um, I would say so. Just to take like Sister Samurai for example, and I think I mentioned the bubbles because in a way Sister Samurai exposes the bubbles, um, because like it appeals to readers who love Asian inspired fantasy, like Rob J. Hayes or Emma Wong, but it also appeals to readers who love Black fantasy. It also appeals to a lot of Black comic readers, and comics that's a completely different completely different bubble. So it's very interesting to see like the different like the audiences who would that the book appeals to. So because of that, kind of going into certain spaces and into certain things, I tend to do a lot of homework. I tend not to go on people's podcasts if I haven't read their books. Like if they haven't had a black author at all before, because it's like, oh, if you've done so many episodes, why haven't you have welcomed or talked to anyone before? um so like the all these things I take into consideration because I'm always cognizant of the fact that I want my audience to feel safe no matter where I am.
Yeah. And on top of that, you're clearly very educated, very literate. So I interviewed with Taylor, my partner, Taylor from Maybe to the Pages. We interviewed Peter Jelly Clark. And obviously, he's an academic, he's a professor. And we were talking specifically about Ring Shout, his
Hmm.
amazing
Very
uh,
good.
mashup of historical fantasy horror, KKK Klansmen being monster. Like it was just awesome. One thing he commented about that is that like for it was part of why he wrote that was because for black people in general, etc. The monsters are not these, you know, mythical, boogeyman creatures. They're, what you have to deal with
Hmm.
in your everyday life. But I think for me, what's been comforting is that, knock on wood, for the most part, in the indie sphere, I haven't had to deal with those monsters, right?
Hmm.
And that was one of my concerns when I first. It's been very welcoming, but that's again, that's in the bubble that I occupy, right?
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to Sister Samurai, you're very candid about blackness and otherness that you laid out there, right? Was that important for you to be that authentic and that raw about certain things when it came to
Yes.
this book? Because I know you said you're writing for a specific audience, but still, this book has, like you said, has enormous crossover appeal, right? But
Yeah.
was it important for you to be really authentic about that aspect?
It was really important. Like I think one of kind of like the disappointments that, and this might not be true for everyone, but at least true from my experience is, once we did finally get a lot of black fantasy, you can kind of tell, especially if you're trad pub, some of these black fantasies have been edited towards the white gaze, as in like things, the way things are explained, the way things are kind of the emphasis on certain things and the focus on certain things, like they are for a white audience. And it's like, oh, we finally get these black fantasy books, but they're not written for us. They're not for us. um, and like this, in many ways, this was kind of encapsulation of that frustration. It's like, why should we always have to cater our books to you, to this general mainstream gaze when you aren't our audience? Um, and to, and again, to say a book that does have such a specific audience, and to show that it can still be appreciated, to show that even though I don't understand this or I may not understand everything of this, I still relate, and I still can relate to this story, or appreciate what the story is and what this character is experiencing. And I think just generally we need more stories like that. Like right now, like you see our, like the biggest things media in our industry is sinners and K-pop demon hunters, and they come from a very specific point of view. Um, and it's that same story, very specific point of view, but it's this the story and the characters are relatable. And those are the type of works I want to continue writing because they are very important.
Yeah, no,
'Cause,
no, I definitely agree. Sorry, you were saying. Sorry,
oh, well,
cut
just
you
kind
off.
of just continuing that, just like also just important in showing empathy and showing humanity, right? Because if you're always um, kind of forcing something to make someone else comfortable, then what lessons are they learning? Like it's not until you're uncomfortable that you have to kind of face and confront. Um, like, oh, things that are different, and like things that are new to you, right?
Yeah, and I commend you because I believe it takes an immense amount of courage, which you clearly have, to write books in an uncompromising fashion. Um, I know what it feels like. Obviously, I write about a I write about a white, bigoted, really bigoted, colonialist, racist, homophobic person who's intolerant, religious, and I write it from his gaze, and I shine a light on some of those issues, and I know that for authors that take those stances and that write in a compromising fashion, there's going to be backlash from some parts, right? It's just natural, right?
Yeah.
So, but I can see that you handle it with grace and aplomb, and I think you should be commended for that. And you also have, which I just learned quickly a bit about, not much before we came on talking backstage. You have a background in editing, so can you speak a bit about that, perhaps?
Sure. And this kind of began about a year ago or 2 years ago. And it was just kind of start as beta reading, and then as I became an indie author, I started beta reading for indie other authors, and they're like, Tatiana, we would pay you for this. This is they're like, this is better than the editor I paid for. I was like, okay, all right, well. But that's also one of my ways of, at least my ways of giving back to the community as well, right? Because having a good editor is really those moments to grow as a writer and to learn more as a writer and learn more about craft. Because it's hard to glean all those things from reviews. So like proofreaders, copy editors. I know for me, when I go through those process, I learn a lot. Like I learn a lot of the words I use too much, or like the little mistakes that I always make. You learn about you more about yourself as a writer, and you want to grow and be better. And I think that's a lot of how I give back to the community too, as well. I just want to see everyone do great, to thrive and flourish.
Well, that's fantastic, and thank you for all you do for the community in that regard. So, as well, now I know that some authors say that since I became an author, it's tough to read books without having my author lens, my author hat on. I find myself, looking at things that I wouldn't normally look at prior to being an author, like, whether it's from a developmental editor standpoint or typos or, sentence structure, things like that, grammar, etc. And on top of that, now you're an editor, which is almost like a second hat. Do you find that affects your ability to read a book simply for pure enjoyment and or as you just shut it off? It's like brains that you just go click and it's fine. You can read whatever. It doesn't matter. You can still enjoy it. You're not particularly looking to critique it for certain aspects that you would be looking from the lens of an editor author. How does it affect your reading?
Yeah, no, it never turns off. It never turns off. I'm one of those people who can't DNF a book. Like I'll DNF a series, but I can't DNF a book. And they're like, Tatiana, but you're not having fun. Like, why do you keep reading the book? I'm like, but there's always something to learn. Like, why are they doing it wrong? Why isn't it working? Like, what's not working here? So sometimes I'll definitely just read books to be like, what's not working here? Why is it not working? Um, but like when I get a book that like things are working, and like it's just like, oh yes, 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 yes. Like I'm currently reading A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Allende. Like I'm in the first couple of chapters,
Loved
but I
it.
mean, just like you get through the prologue and you're just like, oh, that's tight. That was
Loved
it was
it.
like it's like, oh no, she can write. So I'm only in the first couple of chapters, but I'm
Okay,
really enjoying it so
I won't
far.
spoil that. I won't spoil that. And actually, I'm interviewing her in a couple months to talk about her work. So yeah,
Oh,
it was
awesome.
awesome. I think you're gonna love it. I think you're gonna love that book. So, uh, but yeah, so I mean, with all of your different skills, when you're rolling that into being an indie author, you're coming in at a distinct advantage. I think with your education, your background, and the editing. But now, as an indie author, of course, you add things like marketing and promotion, all those other hats that we were uploading stuff on Amazon, learning about why the font isn't fitting it. So,
Yeah.
how has that part of being an indie author worked for you?
Well, before I became an indie author, I was actually working marketing at a law firm, and which is another reason why I decided to go indie because I've had some marketing skills. But you learn the hard way that marketing for other people is very different than marketing for yourself. Because suddenly you got to talk about yourself, and that's not always very comfortable to do. And advocate for yourself, which is not always very comfortable. But kind of just like bringing back these old hats, like in like Sister Samurai, and like most of that art I hadn't drawn since high school, and I was like, well, I guess I'll be bringing this back, and now I like sell stickers at events, and I'm just like, okay. So I've always kind of been a little bit of a jack of all trades, which is again why I think the indie space really benefits me because I've always kind of had my hands in a lot of different things. And yeah, it's especially marketing is a lot because especially as an indie author, there's always something to do. And kind of balancing that with the writing and balancing that with business things, like accounting and taxes and things like so the balancing thing is very it's difficult. It is. It's a challenge.
Wow. So I'm just like I'm checking out. So did you do the
No, no,
cover?
okay. This cover is by Felice Ortiz. He is very talented. He is
Oh,
very talented.
please, Ortiz.
Um, but let's see. I'm pulling out the second book. So in the second book, there's four POVs, and because there's four POVs, I did like little character cards before each POV. So like you'll see like so I drew this stuff. So like I can do like the anime
Oh wow,
the
man, that's
animation.
amazing.
Right?
That's
I could do that.
incredible. Oh my gosh, you're incredible. Artist. That's fantastic. Can I see that again?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. So yeah, if you get the second book, there's artwork.
Oh, I'm definitely getting the second book. Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, so you have like Sister Monique and like all her stats and stuff. It's kind of flipped on the screen, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Oh wow, you're brilliant at that stuff, man. Wow. Well, I mean, again, and Felix Ortiz is one of the most well-known cover artists in certainly in the indie space and beyond. And I see that you had as well in the back you have the wonderful Virginia McLean, brilliant indie author, as a design mentor. So, what was it like to work with Felix Ortiz and Virginia McLean for your book?
So Felice Ortiz, because there's a lot that I was looking for this cover, because again, as doing research, not a lot of artists draw black characters. So, that's something I was looking for in an artist. I want to make sure they can draw black characters. But I also needed an artist that knew how to draw Japanese clothing because I kind of ran into that with like the kind of the character art I commissioned. Um, where I had to explain like every what a kimono is, like how like this what an obi is, like how like little just things worked. With Felice Ortiz, he knew his stuff. I didn't have to explain it. And when I pitched the concept to him, I was like, "Oh, this is inspired by Afro Samurai," and he got back to me. He was like, "Oh, Afro Samurai is one of my favorites," and he was excited about it. He knew exactly the references, exactly what I was thinking of, and I was like, "Yeah, he's the person." Like he's the person, and I do not regret it. He did. He gave me my dream cover. That's what I wanted. Um, so he's awesome. And then with Virginia, I with Zach Argyle and his wife Bookborn, they do the Indie
Yeah.
Fantasy Fund, and I had applied, and I did not win, but I did win the service grant, and the service
Ah,
grant was a free cover design. And so I was talking with Virginia, and I was like, "Well, Virginia, I kind of already have the idea of what I want in my head."
yeah.
And like she's such a lovely person, and she was like,
Yes.
"Well, hey, how about I give you like a Photoshop tutorial because I never went to class, I never went to school for Photoshop. I kind of learned things on the fly. So she kind of we went and did like a she did like a one-on-one tutorial, and like I like there are like some Photoshop things that I still have learned from her from that session that I still do today. Just because there's so many things in Photoshop that like different ways to do things, and so that was great. Like I I was
Wow.
very appreciative of her that she saw that, the best way to help her is to teach her. And, like
Yeah.
not a lot of people do that. And I'm very she was amazing to work with.
Yeah, she's Virginia McVeigh is awesome, great person, community, brilliant author as well. So, and she certainly knows a thing or two as well about writing Asian-inspired fantasy, and she writes great stuff. And her covers are boss too.
Yeah, yeah,
She
true.
has some great covers. So, a quick want to say hello to the wonderful Eddie Castro. Eddie, what's up? Thanks for coming out. Let's say hi to Tatiana and support her on the show. Eddie is an awesome fella, great member of the community. Thanks for coming out, my friend. So. Now, in your journey of writing fantasy, can you talk about some of your influences? That you read along the way that really made you want. I want to write something like this.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think one of the most important books growing up was Dragons of Autumn Twilight by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weis. And and it was just at a book fair, and I saw it was the cover. It's the cover that stopped me. And I was like, what is that? And that book really began my love affair with like epic fantasy and like just big fantasy books. And kind of growing up, just enjoying like Alana by Tamora Pierce, and then getting to high school where you got more grimdark, right? Like George R. R. Martin, Joe Abercrombie, getting into those books, and like I really enjoyed those books because it's like, oh, this is the stuff that I write. Like I'm not a big black versus white, like good guys take down the bad guy type of writer. Um, like I enjoy writing like real people, kind of just like surviving and and just trying to survive in this fantasy world that's probably terrible, but just like really focusing on character and very grounded, like very grounded fantasy. Like that's the type of fantasy that I write. Because a lot of the other inspirations that came later, like after college, was N.K. Jemisin's, P.D. Dudley Clark, Fonda Lee, right? Like those kind of came later. Um, but like at that time, I definitely already had like what I enjoyed writing. So a lot of female heroines, a lot of action, and just grounded stories.
Yeah, I can definitely see because your character work is fantastic. So I can definitely see the emphasis on, and of course the action's fantastic too. But I can definitely see the emphasis on character. Now I noticed in your Goodreads synopsis and pitch, you do reference a pretty famous indie book named sort of Kaigen, as you describe your book as Afro Samurai meets sort of
Yeah.
Kaigen. Um, can you tell us a bit about sort of Kaigen is? I feel like, and I haven't read the book, and I feel like I know. What am I doing, right? I'm gonna
Okay.
revoke. You're gonna revoke my indie author reviewer card. Um, it's one of those books that I've you know circled around it for a long time. I'm like, I really have to read that book. I mean, there's so many reviews and so much feedback about that book. It's one of the probably one of the best reviewed indie books in terms of the volume and quantity of reviews. And you can find sort of Kaigen videos on YouTube. Like, it's very popular.
Yeah.
So almost unfortunately, I think I've heard so much about it, both positive and negative. I'm like, let me let some of, and it's not like it's post hype because the book was written quite a while ago. But I
Yeah.
said I will get to it, but it'll have to be in that right frame of mind. And I'm not a mood reader per se, but I just felt like, okay, I need. There's a time when I don't. It's getting ready for me to read this book. So, what is it about that book in particular that you want to use as a comparator that inspired you? I know, Ganesh. I know. Yes, no, I have not read sort of Kaigen. I know, but what is it about that book in particular that really has inspired you, or you see it as a comparator?
Um, the sport of Kaigen, I think, does something very important in the genre, that I hadn't read when I had started reading it. and it was an emphasis on the woman's story in fantasy. It since there are other POVs, but one of its strengths is the character of Misaki and her story and her journey, and like you and just like the facets in this, and it really was important as this is a woman's story in fantasy, and you didn't read that or get that a lot, um, and that's what I wanted to bring that comparison in with Sister Samurai, that this is a woman's story. Because we get Afro Samurai, right?
Yeah,
Like, which very very male centric, um, misogynistic, not
yeah,
very good female representation there.
yeah.
And I wanted to put it beside Sword of Kaigen and say, like, we're fixing that. Like, this is from a woman's point of view. This is a woman's story, and why that is important. Like I don't, there's another facet that I don't want to spoil. I mean, you've read Sister Samurai. Are we gonna sue? Everyone's read Sister Samurai, right? Okay. Because not only Masaki's character is important as a woman's story, but also a mother's story,
Mhm.
which again
Yeah.
caters back to Sister Samurai. So that's definitely what I wanted people to take with them going into this book. How important that central angle and perspective is here. So what Emma Wong did with like an Asian female character, I wanted to do with a black female character.
Okay, that's you so well said. And I think, as we all can agree, there's just between writing female characters into your story and having a story written from a woman's perspective, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's many fantasy authors that have dozens of POVs, and they have female POVs in story, but that doesn't mean that the story is written from a woman's perspective. So I totally get what you're saying with that. So kudos to you for clearly pulling that off. In the reviews, it's obvious that you did a fabulous job there, and having read the book, I can definitely concur. Um, what has the feedback been specifically? You said that a lot of your black people readers like, hey, thank you so much, Tatiana. This story is for me. Is are there other comments in general that you've received about this book that have really made you go, wow, you know what, I did okay here.
um I mean, just like having like just putting that representation out there, right? Because even fantasy, right? There's a lot of gatekeepers for black women, but also in anime, there's a lot of gatekeepers of black women. So like you have black cosplayers, you have black vendors and things at certain anime events, and like it's still a lot of pushback and a lot of like even when like the Assassin's Creed Yasuke like came out, and it's like this is a real historical character, and there's so much like pushback against this, um and I the importance of creating that space, right? And so it has been very heartfelt. Like there was recently someone who cosplayed Sister Samurai at a convention like a couple of like last month, which was really awesome and really cool. um so like, and I've there's been like fan art of some of the characters in Sister Samurai, so like that's been really really cool. And just being able to see that like this space that I've created, that like people are enjoying it, people are feeling comfortable here.
You must feel just so giddy, just special with that stuff. Like that's the stuff that I think as authors and as nerds, we just it just it gives you the tingles, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
when people do that, when people love your work that much, that so I'm so happy for you. That sounds awesome. That
yeah,
sounds
yeah.
amazing. So just in terms of Sister Samurai and the Champion, so Sister Samurai is book one. You have book two out, Dragon Your Bones. Um, so is there any prospect you can share about when book three might be coming out?
Why, yes. At the very end, on the last page of Return of the Sister Samurai, I do announce it.
Ah,
So it does say coming fall 2026, the Sacred Order.
oh,
So that is coming next year.
fantastic,
But I
fantastic.
am currently working on a novel that's going to be coming in between that, hopefully.
Okay, all right. We'll stay tuned for that as well. And of course, you've written well at a YA series, as well, Forging of Age, and so can you describe a bit what that series is about and how it compares to uh, the shampoo mixes?
Yeah, so that series is a new adult series. So it is about a coming of age competition. They're in the desert and they are on wind ships slaying dragons. So we have a rival story because I always wanted to write a rival story. I didn't think there was a lot of very good girl rivals. Like growing up, again, I love anime, right? Like you had Vegeta and Goku, you had Sasuke and Naruto, you have like all these good, cool rivals, but there is no really cool female rivals. Um, and then we have like a queer normative world, and they are in the desert. There's a romantic subplot. And one of the reasons I wrote this is because, like I enjoyed coming of age stories growing up, but I felt like they didn't really relate to my experiences and my coming of age experiences. So I wanted to write a coming of age story that was more relatable to people of color, and more relatable to our experiences. And you kind of like see that in the duology. Like sometimes you slay the dragons and people don't thank you for it. And that was the goal of that series. Um, and yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I can't wait to read that as well. I obviously that's on my TBR, and I have to get to that too. But I really want to continue on with book two next in terms of your backlist. Now, besides that, you've also written some short fiction. You've the Avid in Winter anthology. That's a very well known anthology in the indie space. You wrote a story in there, I believe. Is that
Yes,
is
I
that
did.
right? Okay.
Mhm.
Can you talk a bit about that story?
That was my first published one. That was 3 years. Okay, okay. A winter marvel. It's called a winter marvel,
Okay.
and it's funny because the book is winter themed.
Yeah.
But one of the things about that I kind of approached the short story is that, well, not all countries in the world have winter, like snow and things. So I actually wrote a the short story is focused on an island, about an island, and the oppressors have brought snow with them, and we don't want snow there. So it's actually like a subversion of the topic, because uh, I always go into things and think about like who is not represented here. And a lot of people don't think that, like, don't consider that there's a lot of countries that don't celebrate winter as, like stereotypically people think of as winter.
Wow. So that sounds amazing. Have to check that out. I haven't read the Advent Winter yet. Another book on my TBR that the end is TBR. You can't read everything, but that it sounds amazing. There's a lot of very popular authors that, including yourself, that in the authors that are in that anthology. So yeah, I definitely have to check it out. Um, you've also submitted for FIA magazine.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about what you've done there?
Yeah, that was crazy. Okay, so Faya, they sent out a call for a spacefaring auntie short story, and I was like, oh, that sounds right up my alley, right? So I did a story that was inspired by my aunt because she is a crazy driver. So I made her into a space asteroid racing driver.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
yeah, yeah, and there are deeper themes, about like how women can definitely live a fulfilling life even if they choose not to have children, and choose to follow their passions and choose to follow what they love to do. And that is like the heart of that short story, but it also kind of has, like my signature like action and humor in it. And so the title of it is "Fuck Them Kids," and I think that definitely gets a lot of people's interest. But like that short story has gone way further than I ever thought it was going to go because it was reviewed several times. It was nominated for a Locust, and it was selected to be in the Best American Science
Wow.
Fiction Fantasy Anthology of the Year. So it that
Wow. Congratulations, man. That's incredible.
yeah, so that short story's gone pretty far.
That is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, you must be thrilled about that.
Yeah, like I had like the most least expectations. I was just like, yeah, this is a fun short story. I wrote it for my aunt. Here, have it.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you go, folks. The power of indie. They always say that, I think we as indies tend to sometimes put ourselves in a box that we can't get into this corner, we can't get to that corner. That some of these so-called prestigious writing awards that we're shut out of them that we won't get. But you're living proof that that's not necessarily true.
Right? Yeah.
So, like I said, congratulations. That's amazing. Speaking of amazing people, my dear friend, the awesome Zach Argos here. Hey, buddy. Thanks so much for coming by. Zach, of course, is a fabulous indie author. He is the author of the Threadlight series, probably one of the most well-known uh, indie series in this space. Extremely well regarded. One of my top, currently sitting in my top indie science fiction and fantasy series of all time. I'll watch that video. Um, Got the privilege to meet Zach again for the first time at Worldcon as well. It was awesome. What a great feeling. And of course, his wonderful wife, Hillary Bookborn, who is a brilliant and very popular booktuber as well. We talked a bit about Zach before you may have come on, about all the incredible work that you and Hillary do in the community with the grants you give to indies authors. So thanks again for all your incredible philanthropic efforts. We don't deserve you. We're very grateful for you. So honored to know you, my friend. And Zach, of course, says hello. And he also says, and get us brilliant, like-minded individuals. Um, so Tatiana, with all of this now, you have a body of work. You've written articles, award nominated short stories. You have all of these things planned. So, are you essentially writing full time now? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, that's currently what I'm doing. Um, does it like am I'm very grateful and blessed to be able to say that I'm definitely breaking even in the business, but like want to keep pushing and keep going because I do definitely want to make this full time um, and able to kind of also give back as well when I'm able when I'm able to do that. But for right now, I'm writing. I'm writing a lot.
Well, that's awesome. That's good news for all of us who love your work. So, can you tell us about some of the great? You mentioned MHND, that's one author. Can you tell us about some of the great authors and books you've encountered recently? So now your influence, now what you've read in the last couple of years, stuff you want to shout out, authors who you think are fabulous in terms of their work that you admire, that that people should be watching out for. Maybe some lesser known under the radar stuff that maybe people haven't read.
Yeah. So stuff like something that I've read like within this year. A Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. Um, it's not one of those books I recommend to everyone because it's very slow paced. But for writers, like just the way he just the way the storytelling is, and he subverts storytelling and uses that. It's just brilliant. like it's brilliant the way the techniques it's mm. Yeah, definitely one of my highlights of the year.
Wow.
um I also highly recommend, and I wish more people pick this up, is I Am King by Damien Chillingforth.
Yeah.
It is basically like a feels like a D&D story, but make it black, with just great, morally great characters, lots of action, like the type of stuff that I like. I like to
Yeah.
read. I feel like not enough people give that the hype that it deserves, honestly. Um, and then one of my author friends, CM Lockhart, she has a novella also out, a novella that's called Death Among the Stars, and it's a
Okay.
very kind of cowboy bebop, very very character study in space. Like it's very very
Oh,
fascinating book. Um, and then we have Law Purvis. She just came out with her debut book, and it is a black sapphic kind of science fiction, fantasy mashup romance, which is really cool. It's like the
okay.
incarnation of chaos. That one's really cool. Um, and then like I'm also like constantly like reading books and like trying to read more books. Um, there is The Mud Crab Kingdom by Joel Anthony Hamilton. I think that's just a very
Oh, okay.
very great like YA epic fantasy because we don't have a lot of YA books. We don't have a lot of YA books that center black queer boys. And I think that one is special. That also doesn't get a lot of attention. Um, but yeah, like there are some indie gems out there, and sometimes like you gotta find them.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of indie gems out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Where do you,
one thing I also do recommend. So I recently helped published was a contributing editor in an anthology, Magic in the Melanin, and it is an all Black fantasy anthology. So I highly recommend to pick it up if you're looking for more Black authors. You're looking to just try what their work and try their voice and see if you like them and see like what they're doing. Like there are some really great standout short stories in that anthology. Like I definitely recommend to check it out if you're looking for more like just authors. Um, yeah, yeah, to check
okay.
out.
Okay. I am putting that on my TBR, my Goodreads TBR as we speak. And once it goes TBR, it must be read at some point. It might be years from now, but it doesn't matter. It must be read. It must be read. Thank you for those amazing recs. That's
Yeah, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. The anthology is a great sampler.
Okay. And speaking of phenomenal authors, Timothy Wolf, give it up for Timothy. Hey, buddy. Another brilliant author. Thanks so much for coming by and supporting. He's always so supportive of the channel. Really appreciate it. It's always great to see him. And he is a fan. He's a fan. Sister Samurai is an absolute banger. It definitely is, Timothy. I totally agree. Check out Timothy's books. I have to continue with his series, of course. Read the first book, loved it, and he was so kind to send me the rest of his series, and I have to really get to that in the new year. But yeah, that Timothy is awesome. And Zach says, "Gotta head out. You're both awesome. Thanks so much, brother.
uh,
Take care. Always good to see you. Bye now." So Tatiana, what you've talked a lot about the indie space and some of the reasons why you got into it as opposed to trying to. Where do you think, as someone you're an editor, you have a lot of unique insights as editor, writer. You published in a variety of spheres, short stories. I thought was it. Where do you think this indie thing is going? This indie space is going, and where do you think it's specifically going for BIPOC authors?
ooh, um, as you know, it's not an easy time to be in any. I would say when I published in 2022 is definitely harder now than it is then. One of the reasons is because of AI, but also because of high economic times, inflation, etc. Um, you know, that really affects things. Um, and so, you know, I see, like a lot of black authors like Kickstarters that fail, or like are struggling to get or struggling to succeed, and so like those barriers to entry for indie publishing is actually getting harder for BIPOC authors, um, especially if you choose not to do AI, which no AI. um, but those barrier of entries is actually I believe getting harder. Um, And like when you have these times, especially when the economy is so bad, what you end up seeing is kind of a separation, right? Like the authors that are already doing well are doing better, and then like the authors that aren't are struggling even more. Like you kind of like that's what you tend to see when you're in like times like this, right? Um, so like I do recommend like those authors help pull them up because it's hard. Like it's hard out there. Um, one trend that I am seeing is there are a lot of authors, BIPOC indie authors who are successful making the trad flip, and becoming hybrid authors. So I am seeing more of that, but it's usually when you're already successful, when you're like already, a safe bet for traditional publishing. Um, I think there are trends because there are definitely trends within the BIPOC community, and then there's trends in like other spaces and other things. Um, I think we're gonna continue to see like humorous books, cozy books, like I definitely think those are gonna get bigger in the space. Um, but yeah, like it's the times we are in, the times we are in. It's hard to predict.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for specifically a Bible author breaking in now, coming into the space? Any tips, tricks of the trade, maybe pitfalls to cover? Anything that if you were speaking to one that anything you can tell them?
Yeah. Like you find that this industry changes a lot. Like it fluctuates a lot. Like, like even social media, the algorithm changes, the social media changes. Like Twitter does it exist anymore? Like things go don't and then like you're always changing tactics in regards to marketing, but at the very 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 heart of things that won't change is writing a good book and writing a good story. um like that, getting those basics down, getting those fundamentals down, that I think your focus is really important there because like I said, like publishing changes so fast, and like the what works marketing wise for someone else doesn't work for another person. I mean like like now, like yeah, there's tariffs that's kind of blowing things up. They're talking about getting rid of, at least here in America, getting rid of media mail, which makes doing direct. I don't know how authors would be able to like sell off their websites and do direct. Like, there's just so much. There's so much. And so because of that, you have to be willing to swivel. At least for me right now, I find that in-person events, like even just like local events, um, has been very helpful and has been very successful, like getting out, talking to people, and getting out in the community, has been successful for me, particularly this year. But yeah, things are going to change and things change fast. And so, but one thing that stays consistent is a good book is a good book.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. And Timothy was commenting, yeah, saying, yeah, based on the state of affairs, it does suck. He says most of my editors, artists are in Europe, so the declining dollar is blowing up my expenses. I feel you, brother. I feel for you. Yeah, that's we cope with so much as indies. We cope with a stigma that's not necessarily fair. We cope with all kinds of things, but I think indies are prevailing ultimately. So
Yeah,
I do feel like the indie space is just so dynamic. It's just so
it
original.
is.
It's
Yeah,
cutting edge.
yeah. If it
It's
wasn't so
avant garde.
dynamic, Trap wouldn't be trying to copy us.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, as I say, I'm sure it's not. I don't think originally, but trad chases set the trends and we set them.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, it is tough. But you were speaking about in person events, and recently, I was mentioning I met Zach and Ganesh at WorldCon. You went to a con recently, didn't you?
Yes, yes. So I went to Gen Con at the end of July, beginning of August. Virginia was telling me about it. She was like, "Hey, you should come to Gen Con." I was like, "Okay." Not really at that time comprehending how big this convention was. Apparently, it's the third largest convention in America. It was sold out. There was like 70,000 people. At the heart of it is a tabletop convention. So you have people everywhere playing board games, but they do have a section for artists and do have a section for authors. Um, and so that was just a really, really great experience. This is my first con, kind of my first time getting out, talking, and meeting people. But it was a good experience, and being able to pitch my book, like you really get that practice in pitching to people over and over and over again, and seeing like because you know seeing how well, especially my duology did, I think that surprised me the most. I think one of the reasons why it did so well is because it's fantasy with a romantic subplot, and I think you can kind of start feeling the fantasy romance romantasy exhaustion. So people are there's so there is an audience that's looking more for fantasy with like just romance in there, right? And so I kind of do see saw that leaning a little bit um, towards that way. That was yeah, that was very very eye opening. Lot of lessons learned in regards to like just logistics and attending a con.
Cons are a lot. They're amazing. They can also be overwhelming in
Yeah.
a way. And you kind of, I feel like, I don't know if you feel the same way. I'm still kind of coming down from the highs of Worldcon.
Yeah, it
It
took me
kind of
2 weeks.
yeah, it kind of stays with you, right? But Dave says, yeah, he was getting FOMO from the pictures. I was one thing. I'm that guy that if I go somewhere, we're gonna post pictures. So you got tons of pictures from me from Worldcon, and like I said, the highlight was meeting all the amazing people. Hopefully, I get to meet Timothy someday. By the way, 2026 is in Montreal, Canada. So,
Ooh.
sorry, is it 2020? I think it's 2026. That's in Canada. So, hey,
I liked Canada when I was there. I went to Toronto and Calgary
yeah,
and Montreal. I've been to
yeah.
yeah, all
Oh,
three.
fantastic. Yeah.
Really great.
Why I'm born and raised in Toronto. I live a couple of hours north of there now. One of my kids lives in Calgary, and Montreal's one of my favorite cities. So hopefully you come up. Maybe think about coming up for Rokon. That you goes for you too, Timothy, and you Ganesh, and everyone else in the audience. Hopefully you hit up you hit it up. And yeah, Ganesh was just mentioning that he loves meeting male. That reason.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't
Hopefully.
go the way of the dinosaurs. So, but Tatiana, you've been so generous with your time. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm so honored again that you joined me. I want to give you an opportunity as we're winding down. Just to let everybody know where they can buy your books, the best places. If you sell direct on your website, for example, if you have swag to sell, boost up your social media platforms. We can find you. Where do you normally lurk? Is it TikTok? Is it Blue Sky? Is it X? Is it wherever? Right? So maybe you can let the audience know.
Yeah. So I am on social media at Obey the Author because I still play on my name. Pretty much everywhere. I'm more active on IG and Threads, but I will generally just see things faster if you use the contact form on my website and just email me. And to purchase, I am wide, so my books are everywhere. But if you want a signed book with extra goodies, with all the stuff that I've drawn and stickers and collectible trading cards, then you can get them from my website.
That sounds awesome. Sorry, Ganesh, correct me. Thank you, my friend. So Montreal is actually 2027. So LA, sorry, LA is next year. Yes, I'm not going to LA. Just would be way too pricey get a hotel in LA
I
for
can
2 weeks.
imagine.
But Montreal, obviously, I will definitely be there. I guess they can't call it Worldcon if it's always in the US. Yes, that's true, my friend. Well, it's going to be. We're already playing for like Ireland, and I think it's 2029, and so yeah, I want to go to all the places that I mean, I'm definitely gonna go to Montreal to Canada where I live, but I definitely want to see the world, like combine the trip, like vacation, Worldcon, So I'm looking forward to Ireland and other locales in the future. So, folks, thank you so much, everyone who joined the chat, all the amazing friends. and the community for tuning in. Thanks to everyone who's going to watch this on replay. You are what makes this type of long form content awesome. You and incredible guests like Tatiana. So thanks to everyone who was watching and participated and commented and asked questions. Tatiana's been completely amazing. Go buy her books, man. They are fabulous, absolutely fabulous. So, and again, look out for my year end top books. I do indie and trad, and I have a feeling this will figure on that list somewhere. Quickly for me, shameless self promo time. P.L. Stewart, Dragon King Saga author. 5 books out now in the series. Pack Wolves just got published in the spring of 2025, and Black Dragon on Red, book six. Sixth book, almost there. 6 of 7 is coming in the spring of 2026. Also, right now, I also have the short story in the Shapers of the World anthology. It's fantasy horror. It's called Forest Dark. I encourage you to check out that anthology. And my first foray into short fiction short story. Tatiana, if you want an arc of that whole anthology, some brilliant authors there. I'd love to hook you up with a copy.
I'll take it.
Um, yeah, absolutely. I'll send it to you. So yeah, but yeah, just promoting that as well. Some brilliant authors, and again, it's this is my foray into fantasy horror, set a couple centuries before the events of my main series, but very much tied into the main series, and you'll see that later on. So let's see if that last comment from Ganesh said, yeah, 2020 might be in Prague, depending on how the vote goes. Okay. So yeah, we'll just do a world tour, man. Let's go to World Cons for the next, 30 years. So that'd be awesome. But I hope to see you soon, Ganesh, maybe in Montreal, I'm hoping. So once again, check out Tatiana's books. Follow her on socials. She's a brilliant author. It's humbling to have her on Six Elementals. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and we will see you next time.